Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to Snowflake Office Hours with Roomkey, a hotel meta search engine that is partnered with 6 of the major hotel brands. Our guest speaker today is Sam Hewitt, lead data scientist, where he is responsible for building and managing the analytical engine that provides insights into their customer behavior. And my name is Jeannie Liu. I'm a product marketing manager here at Snowflake. I'll be the moderator for today's event. As you may already know, office hours are designed for attendees to hear directly from customers about their data warehousing journey, and more importantly, get your questions answered. The goal is to have effective dialogue and for attendees to come away with insights they wouldn't get otherwise. There are 3 housekeeping items to keep in mind. One is if you have any tech difficulties, please chat us in the console. The second is we will hold all questions until the end, but please do type them in throughout the presentation. And finally, the slide deck and recording will be made available upon the completion of the session. I'm personally looking forward to your presentation, Sam, and how you tackle the greenfield new opportunity. I know there's a lot to unpack here, so without further ado, Sam, off to you.
Thanks, Jeannie. I'm very happy to be here today. Let's get going. So, like Jeannie mentioned, Roomkey is a meta search site for hotels, and we see ourselves as in a unique market position because we're owned by the 6 of the world's largest hotel companies, and that allows us to access their exclusive loyalty rates, and we're the only third-party search site to be able to do so. A lot of people think that Expedia and other sites like that have the lowest rates, but oftentimes with our unique partnership, we actually have access to lower rates than you can find anywhere else. So, like a lot of other websites, Roomkey needs to be able to track the performance of the website as well as some other products, including a Chrome extension. We need to be able to differentiate and respond to our users' needs, serving them content based on their past history with the site. And because Roomkey is growing and changing rapidly over time, we wanted to have a lot of historical flexibility in the analytics that we record rather than just looking at time period aggregates. So that brings us to Snowflake. A lot of our, or I guess all of our website events that customers generate look like semi-structured JSON objects. We started off with a Postgres solution, which was okay as we were building, but keeping track of the fields that we needed to index was a challenge for us. And we were running a very large instance in AWS 24/7 and not really needing all of that performance all the time. We also anticipated scaling issues as we accumulated more and more data into this database. So we were looking for a new data warehousing solution, and we ended up on Snowflake. And with Snowflake, our analysts can run very expensive queries without harming the production system because of how Snowflake provisions warehouses. As a result of this, Roomkey has been able to make more advanced analytical decisions quickly because, like I mentioned, we were storing all historical data rather than aggregates, allowing us to go back in time and look at the data in new ways, comparing the past with the present. And the seamless integration with the BI tools, specifically Looker, has given our non-technical users similar power to our analytical users. So that was a pretty brief introduction into Roomkey and Snowflake, and now I'd like to open it up to any of y'all's questions.
Thanks, Sam. We have a handful of questions here. So let me just start off with one of the key points that you brought up. So you talked about that Roomkey was able to make more quicker and, I guess, more effective decisions because you guys stored historical data rather than aggregates. So what does that really mean? Were you able to parse apart the data rather than look at patterns, and did that help you get more insight into customer behavior? That's the first question. And then the second question is, what were you using in the past, and how was Snowflake a big enabler of you guys getting this parsing of data?
Yeah. So what we mean by storing all historical data is that we store raw website events. And a lot of traditional web analytics platforms, which is what we were using in the past, such as Google Analytics or Adobe Site Catalyst or Omniture, store things in aggregate. And you have to make sure that everything is set up exactly the way you want to measure it when you're recording it. And what we've been able to do with Snowflake is store off all the raw data that we need and go back through and run different queries, look at things in different aggregates in the past, and build and compare how the website was doing in some way in the past to how it's doing now. And it's allowed us to be very flexible with the type of queries that we can run because we're storing all of the raw data. And Snowflake allows you to do that because of how well it scales with volumes of data.
That's a great point, Sam. And I guess that brings us to really it's not just looking at historical data, but that informs sort of the decisions that you'll make and the patterns that you see and what you predict going forward. Related to that question is how big are the data sets that you're using? I know they vary, but just a rough estimate on the rows and perhaps size.
Yeah, I was actually just looking at this today to prepare, and it looks like we have about 5 million rows, and most of our rows are, like I said, these raw website events, and they vary in size, but we have about 75 gigs of data in Snowflake now, and that's been running for about a year. And so we'll predict that every year we'll add about that, if not more, data to Snowflake as traffic increases to roomkey.com.
That's great, and what perfect timing. Another question we got was somewhat related is when you integrate JSON. So one of the key points that you brought out in, I think it was slide 3, was you had a lot of JSON data and you needed to be able to integrate with SQL. So what was the process like for you integrating those sources with SQL?
Yeah, so we knew we wanted the flexibility of semi-structured data when we were recording or saving off all of these events. And we started with Postgres because it's very easy to spin up. You can do it directly from the AWS console. And the SQL support for JSON and Postgres is very good and very similar to what Snowflake provides. However, they do not provide very easy means to index all of the fields in the JSON. And like I said with the previous question, we didn't know what we wanted to query when we were building this system. And we certainly won't know what we need to query now in the future. So we struggled a lot in providing the right indexes for when we were using Postgres, and our queries that our analysts were running would take too long to really make a quick data-driven decision. And so moving away from having to run our own indexes and just rely on the integrated JSON support, and that's pretty seamless in Snowflake, has been a big win for us. And in terms of the actual integration with SQL, the queries that you write and how you access JSON objects it's very similar between Snowflake and Postgres for us, and it's a pretty clean query language that we've had no trouble using.
Sam, that's a great point, especially when you talk about queries that you write. You really don't know what you're going to query, and you don't know how big the data size is, so it's important that you're able to look at the size of the data and actually look at all the different sources. So related to that is another point that you brought up was the integration with BI tools. What are some of the other partners that you've been integrating with, and how do they fit into the larger picture with Snowflake?
So like you mentioned in the beginning, Jeannie, this was a greenfield project, so we were looking for both a BI vendor and a database that would sit behind that. And we pretty quickly found a BI vendor that we like called Looker, which I mentioned in the presentation, and they saw our use case and actually recommended Snowflake to us. The integration between Looker and Snowflake is very strong. it actually made the transition from Postgres to Snowflake very easy within their platform. We've had great success with the integration with help from both the Looker team and the Snowflake team to make sure it was seamless.
Great. So let's shift gears a little bit. This next chunk of questions will come into really the evaluation process. So when you looked at competitors, and maybe you didn't look at any competitors because this is a new greenfield opportunity, but what are some of the elements that allowed you to choose Snowflake over other data warehouses?
Yeah, so Roomkey has most of their operations living in AWS, so we were looking for something that was at least close to that. We considered Redshift, but again, the JSON support similar to Postgres isn't quite as strong as we found with Snowflake. We also knew that our analytical needs were going to scale differently based on the day, based on the queries, based on the production load, and we were looking for something that would be very flexible to handle that situation. So when we found out about Snowflake and saw how the warehousing would work, pay for what you need, you're not paying 24/7 if you're not using it 24/7. We thought that was a very good idiomatic fit with how the rest of our data pipeline was working. We knew that our analysts were only going to be running these complex queries during the day, and they would need a lot of resources in order to run them. However, we knew that our ingest process was fairly simple, and that runs almost 24/7, but it doesn't require a lot of computational resources. So the ability to have a very small warehouse running ingest mostly 24/7, at the same time we can have very powerful resources during the business day for our analysts to use, was a major win and a major selling point to convince the rest of the team that Snowflake was a good fit.
Sam, those are excellent points and definitely points that we hear throughout. So glad we're all aligned. Related to that, and again, for the audience, these questions have been very, very helpful to create this new dialogue. Did you look at Hadoop-based solutions as you outgrew what Postgres could provide?
We actually transitioned from a Hadoop MapReduce-based system, and the reason for that, again, is that it was giving us these sort of historical aggregates. It was very good at parsing through the stream of events and reducing that down into some report. However, those reports ended up being static, and we could rerun the MapReduce process, which was just expensive. And we really decided that we wanted a paradigm shift in the type of analytics that we were running. And so that's really why we ended up on a data warehouse solution where we could put raw data rather than generating aggregate reports from it.
Makes sense. And then Sam, similar question, but when you looked at importing the data, how easy was it initially to actually do that? Did you have to do it in batches? Was it more of a real-time refresh solution? Talk us through the process.
Yeah, so we probably had about 3 months worth of data sitting in Postgres before we got, spinning up on the trial of Snowflake, and we're trying to evaluate it. And so luckily that wasn't a huge data set, a few gigabytes. And we were simply able to, select star from the tables that were in Postgres, and then download those, and Snowflake has the ability to upload CSVs, so we wrote a quick ingest from the CSVs that we downloaded from Postgres, and that was it. I'd say it took less than a day of one software developer's time to do that. I know that's a pretty unique solution or situation for us because we were so green in this project, but the transition was pretty seamless.
That's good to hear, Sam. And assuming that you guys aren't green anymore, what are some of the next steps and what are some of the things that, the possibilities that are out there that excite you going forward?
Yeah, so it's the ability to throw even more and more data at Snowflake. So we we generate a ton of events on the website, and we throw a large proportion of those into Snowflake. However, there's room as we've been evaluating and watching the size of our tables grow and monitoring the performance of our queries to throw even more at it, which means that we'll be able to get even finer grain resolution on the analytical decisions that we make. And that just pushes us further down this idiomatic shift of storing all the data in the data warehouse without having to think of anything as an aggregate.
That's great, Sam. And slightly shifting gears a little bit as we sort of do a review of how you guys got started on Snowflake, why you chose Snowflake. And now I want to close with what are some of the lessons you learned in your implementation? So perhaps talk about some of the roadblocks or hazards or basically best practices that you can share with the audience online.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I just talked about the benefits of the warehouse provisioning system. And I think some of the issues that we encountered were some of the negatives, and maybe it's a negative of the integration with Looker, where there were some scheduled queries that were spinning up our more powerful warehouses more frequently than needed to be. And so we went through some iterations of trying to optimize spend and performance of our queries to make sure that we were keeping Snowflake within budget. Luckily for us, there's resource monitoring solutions on Snowflake to prevent you from spending too much. But we did sort of struggle through the shift of having something that was just up 24/7 that we could query all the time at no extra cost to us, to a solution where it was costing us money to run those queries. But I think after we got through that and understood what we needed to do, we're in a place where we're very comfortable with our spend and very comfortable with the projection of where that spend is going to go into the future. I think, another consideration that we had to make was, again, with the lack of indexing, how just conceding control of that over to Snowflake was a shift for some of our analysts who wanted to have more fine-grained control over some of the indexes. However, as we've just sort of stepped back and let Snowflake perform well, maybe we don't see as fast of a query in some things as we do in others, but overall, the speeds have been very, very good relative to what we were getting with some very slow queries coming out of Postgres.
Great, Sam. So we're always happy to hear that speeds have been very good. And I want to go back to the earlier point you made where you said that you're in a place that you're comfortable with spend now and going forward. And related to that, a question just came in, and one of the things that this individual is asking is, do you scale up and down between machine sizes? Are you experiencing any snags in that? How is the actual scaling up and down working for you?
So it works really well. And with Looker, we don't have quite the flexibility that Snowflake can provide, where Looker uses the same warehouse over and over again. So we found one that fits our needs, which is a medium. And then for some of the ad hoc queries that analysts are doing within the Snowflake console or from their computers, we do just allow them to choose the warehouse that they think is right. And that can vary from an extra small to a large, to maybe even an extra large if they're doing something really big. And Roomkey's team is pretty small, and we don't have to worry too much about them going crazy running some very, very large warehouses all the time. But it's just very easy to select the warehouse that you need. So we have sort of provisioned warehouses for our team to use in various sizes, and then whenever the analyst needs to use it, they just go find that one and they go. It's very easy.
That's great. Sam, you mentioned analyst. How big is the team that you're using? I guess it depends on the size of the organization, but how many people that you know of within your, I guess, sphere of responsibility actually use Snowflake? Is it pretty effective for both BI and IT folks? Is there a set number of people that use it? What is your environment like?
So I was responsible for building this project, and so I was the main person doing, let's just call the software or DBA side of Snowflake. So I found it very manageable to do that as a team of one. We have 2 technical analysts who will use Snowflake mostly as a query engine. They might be inserting some new data that they want to join to the set of event data that we have at Roomkey. And then the rest of our users interface with Snowflake through Looker. So we don't have a very big analytical team, but a lot of our like more business users, our project managers, our CFO, CEO, or our marketing team will interface with Snowflake solely through Looker, which is a great solution for them since they might not be as comfortable connecting to it through the command line or writing the actual SQL queries themselves.
That's a great point, but the good news is that all these insights and data are especially relevant to everybody in an organization, so it's good to see that data is being percolated throughout the organization. We're almost at the end of office hours. I see that we're just about done. I know that there's a couple of pretty technical questions that have come up, so for everyone else on the line, please, if it doesn't pertain to you, at least it's a good learning opportunity. So one of the things was, are you using the variant data type for all your JSON data? How is that working for you?
Yes, we are. It works very well. Like I said, the SQL interface into the variant and JSON types is very easy for us. Most of our events are very flat, so it simply looks like accessing a key value pair from the event. Performance is strong, like I said, especially when generating aggregates from this variant, and you don't have to worry about having events with new key value pairs. They're just sort of handled automatically, indexed or clustered is the term that Snowflake uses, automatically. It really feels like you're accessing fields from a table without having to manage the schema.
That's a great point, Sam. And one more related to that is, so with Snowflake, did you have to design your own data warehouse, or did you drop the data in, and then Snowflake created the schemas, views, and joins?
So, like I mentioned earlier, we came from Postgres, where we had defined a few tables, and the table structures transferred almost one-to-one. We could actually simplify them a little bit when we came to Snowflake because we didn't have to worry so much about indexing. So you do have to define your table schema in Snowflake. However, with the variant fields and the semi-structured data, you can really ingest, or we can ingest whatever we want without worrying about updating that schema.
Perfect. So those were the last couple of questions that have come in, Sam. I'm truly excited for the success that you guys have seen and for Roomkey overall. Any final thoughts that you want to close with, and we'll wrap it up?
No, I mean, I think we've had a great discussion. I think Snowflake's been a great fit for us, and I know we have a very, very special use case, but I've been interested to learn through my previous engagements with Snowflake about all the other use cases, and I think it's a really good tool, and it's been a good partnership for Roomkey.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone on the line. Thank you, Sam. The deck and recording will be made available upon the completion of this session, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Have a great day. Bye-bye.